I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
And we're back, Chelsea fans. Another episode of the London is Blue podcast coming at you post-match. Another Sunday match, unfortunately, but thanks somehow to scheduling, Dan and Nick, we're all here. We made it, thankfully. And Nick, yet another weekend flying in the sky for you.
That's right. We did delay recording so that I could make it back. Spent the weekend in Seattle with Dan. Shenanigans ensued, and it was quality. Seattle's a wonderful town. Shout out, Dan, to the Shed in Seattle group, who were great hosts for the match this morning.
Yeah, they are quite a lovely bunch of individuals, and contrary to popular belief, Nick did not drink all the whiskey in Seattle. He left some for those who also would enjoy a little bit of a brown beverage.
Boy, did we try yesterday, though. We gave it the old college try. It just, Brandon, I don't know if you know this, when you drink some bourbon and then you throw a couple liters of German beer on top of it, your hangover, I'm going to call it, was terrible. Terrible would be the word.
Oh, well, that's what you get for not inviting me. So anyways, in this episode, we're going to be talking about just how good Mason Mount was. And, of course, hashtag Pulisic watch. And then we're going to move on to why Chelsea faltered today. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit of what's starting to go right for Frank Lampard's Chelsea. Tricked you. You definitely thought we were going to say what's going wrong. But before we get into that, Dan, we owe some audio love to some 5-star reviews.
Yeah, they just keep on coming. The Apple Podcast review train it's a bullet train now. It is just going 100 miles an hour. So we want to thank Am on the Night Shift. We want to thank N. Hosington. We want to thank JJ McAllister's, UM Go Blue, Caleb S98M, Fiss, Mental X99, Tim Apple 69, Nikhil 5459, Rivera X 42, G Gib 87. All left amazing 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. We are beyond thankful. It helps people find the show, helps people get connected with the best Chelsea podcast around, which is the three of us. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it. Keep on doing it, and you'll get the shout out at the beginning of the next episode.
I love that Tim Apple left a review. That's great to hear that he's listening to the show. Really appreciate that.
From South Africa, of all places.
Yeah, he's got that VPN. Don't worry, Nick. Anyways, 2 more Patreons. They have just been flooding in this month. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Michael. I believe you were both already in the Discord server, and Dan, per usual, has given you the warm welcome. Lastly, before we get into the match review, Nick, it would be rude of us not to share the discounts that we have for all of our listeners.
Sure. Before I get into the discounts, though, Dan posted a wonderful update on London is Blue podcast stickers coming to a Patreon member near you. Dan, will you please tell the people what they might expect?
Yeah, we ordered a bunch of logo stickers. And it's a pretty big box. Nick saw it, and yeah, they're great. They affix the things quite well, and we just decided as a way to give back and say thank you. Anyone that's currently a $3 Patreon per month or greater, we're gonna send you out a sticker in the next couple weeks. And we decided, actually, if you join us on Patreon, $3 or more a month, this week, by the end of this week, and the next match kicks off, we will send you a sticker as well.
Awesome. So, just to some in summary for that one, you could get a sticker before me if you join up this week. So,
well, I mean, of course they're going to get it before you because we're never going to give them to you.
It'll probably be in London.
I have some. I have a whole package.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's called being a friend. Ever heard of it? All right, moving on. 10% off World Soccer Shop, code LondonPod. I know a bunch of you have already used the code this month for your Pulisic kit. So that is good. Talisman caps 10% off, $35 or more with the code LondonBlue10. So you need to put the 10 at the end. We've had a couple of questions about that. That's what we were wearing on the old YouTube channel if you're watching it there. Dan has a nice little CFC Brandon is throwing up his hat, even though he's not wearing it because his hair is too nice. And I am wearing the Drogba legend cap, so that was cool. And then we have a couple of specials coming out soon with classic football shirts, so you got to stay tuned to that. But certainly within the next week or two, we'll have an announcement there. So lots of goodies coming your way, courtesy of your friends at the London is Blue podcast.
Awesome. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that. We just want to try to give back as much as we can to our listeners right at the beginning of the episode. But we don't need to waste any more time. Here it is, match review. It was Leicester City in the Premier League, and it was the home opener at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea won, Leicester City won. Unfortunately, maybe a couple points dropped. So the overarching theme of this episode is going to be how Chelsea ran out of steam. So, as we look into this, the first place we always start, Dan, has to be the lineup. This was Frank's first lineup at home, and I'm a bit confused personally. Yannick and someone else said it's a 4-3-3. Other people, all the apps, all the statistical websites saying it's a 4-2-3-1. I don't know. Does it even matter?
Well, it doesn't matter because there are 11 players on the pitch, and it was Kepa, Azpilicueta, Christensen, Zouma, Emerson, Conte, Jorginho, Pedro, Mount, Pulisic getting the start. Very excited. And Olivier Giroud as our 11 on the pitch. Frank Lampard's first 11 as Chelsea manager at Stamford Bridge. Bench included Marcus Alonso, Ross Barkley, Tammy Abraham, Willie Caballero, Mateo Kovacic, and Fikayo Tomori. And we saw Abraham, Willian, and Kovacic all make appearances in this match.
Well, if we run down the stats, if you would have taken a snapshot of the first 20 minutes, then at halftime, and then at about 70, 75 minutes, and then the end of the match, it would have been very different pictures throughout this match. But as it ended, Chelsea were even on possession with Leicester at 50%. Chelsea edging the total shots with 14 over 12, 5 on target versus Leicester's 3. 15 tackles there, 17. 3 offsides. Of course, we got the lone yellow card from rookie referee. It was overall, at the end of the day, extremely even so much as that the expected goals was 1.3 for Chelsea to 1.1 for Leicester City. So again, it was very much a tale of two halves, which I think we can get into in a little bit. But in whole, it was very, very much even across the board. So as we mentioned earlier, Nick, we do want to touch on Mason Mount. Why wouldn't we? It would be easy to be disappointed and downtrodden after letting Leicester have a share of the points today, but here are 2 words that should make you at least a little happier. Mason Mount. Let's talk about some of the stats surrounding our goal scorer's performance today. So the first one coming from @OptaJoe saying 1996. Mason Mount is the first English player to score for Chelsea under an English manager since Dennis Wise under Glenn Hoddle against Blackburn in May of 1996. That was a while ago, Nick, probably before any of us were watching.
Yep. I mean, that was it was quite a while ago. And, I think it's really funny that, it's just him, because I think he's with Frank last year. He's kind of seen as this reincarnation of what Frank can do from a goal scoring perspective from midfield. And he's the guy who now gets to kind of carry the torch a little bit.
Not only that, Mason Mount produced 3 shots on target against Leicester City today. That was more than all the other Chelsea players combined. So they only combined for 2. He had 3 himself. His second shot on target was his first ever Premier League goal. Not a bad day for the 19-year-old.
Yeah, he was definitely in fine form.
19. What were you doing at 19?
Not that. That's all I'm going to say. How about this, Dan? He had 62 touches, 5 crosses, 3 shots on target, 5 shots, 3 tackles made, 1 goal scored. It seemed like a pretty big box-to-box performance from Mason today.
Yeah, Mason definitely offered a lot going both ways. And I think he's someone who offers you the ability to track back, the ability to press, the ability to contribute in the defensive third, in addition to getting forward and just wreaking general havoc. I think, there's been some thought and, there's maybe some overcritical analysis of Mason just because he's Frank's player. He played for Derby last season, and people just can't enjoy anything nice, Nick. It basically is just, I think we need to appreciate what he is and how he's growing in front of us in terms of a player and what he was able to do today. Sure. Did he get out of steam at certain points? Yes. But this whole team played 120 minutes on Wednesday. Like, come on.
In Turkey. So there's travel as well on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he was outstanding for the first half, and then we didn't have one player in the second half really stand up and be counted. And that it's not to say that we were completely out of it in the second half, but it wasn't pretty. I mean, he was really all over the place in the first half, and I think there was a thought, and our friend Mark Worrell tweeted this, that he was having a conversation at one of the various pubs, I'm sure, about how if we don't score a goal or two in the first 20 minutes, it's going to be a long season. And Mason certainly did that today. He got his goal, and the celebrations were outrageous, and his, the look on his face was so great, and Frank, right there with him, kind of celebrating. And, 25th minute rolls around, and it kind of goes downhill from there. So, he was really, really good. I'd rate him, a 7.5 out of 10. And I think there's always room for young players to improve, not only with stamina, and keeping their shape and all that kind of stuff, but just, to help bail the team out of tough moments too, which Leicester certainly gave us all we can handle in the second half.
Well, I think the good thing about having Mason on the pitch was how much the fans took to support him as well. I think this is probably a good place to interject the atmosphere today. We got a lot of reports. We saw it on TV. We Are the Shed group going above and beyond with their tifos and their banners, and just really making it a special, special atmosphere. I mean, again, it's not only for Frank. I mean, it's for the players as well. This is the first time they get to see this team at Stamford Bridge live in front of them. I mean, it's a super special time. I'd love to get to go to an opening season match sometime at Stamford Bridge, because I feel like that's one of like the bucket list things of a fan is, you want to see Champions League. You want to potentially see a trophy lifted there. Opening day has got to be up there with them. I mean, you see, Dan Silves and Chidge and JK and Marco and Clayton. Everyone is tweeting about how they've been waiting for this, and they are ready to take on 9 months of suffering and agony if it must, because of just how much they love it. And so the atmosphere was electric, and the way Chelsea started, I mean, we were all over Leicester, suffocating them, Dan, not letting them get out of their own half unless they were hoofing it. And then to finally, after the first 3 minutes, we had 3-4 chances right and then. Mason got it off a high press in the defensive third, picked Ndidi's pocket, and right before he fell to the ground off balance, somehow pulled his shot back across him and left Schmeichel completely rooted to the ground. It just, everything, including, the narrative behind Mason and is he going to be the next academy player to establish himself as a first-team player since JT, it all seemed to be going to script. It was the perfect way to start this match.
Yeah, I mean, I am not coordinated enough to do anything falling to the ground other than place my hands in front of my face, and somehow this guy falling to the ground can just notch in a goal. So massive credit to Mason. I think the things we need to keep in mind, he's only 19. Point number 2, he's only 19. Third point is he's only 19. He is very far, if we kind of argue maybe that 26, 27 starts to be the prime for any player. So this guy is going to develop over the course of this season, hopefully several seasons, as he's on a 5-year contract extension. He definitely is able to give this side something that Ross Barkley doesn't, and that he is a little bit tighter with his possession, so he doesn't give the ball away quite frequently. When it was passing in the opposition half, he actually had a 91% pass accuracy in the opposition half, which you would argue you tend to have more players around you, more players on top of you. You might be finding a little less space, and he was still capable of retaining possession, especially during that first half. I think him and the rest of the team did struggle in that second half. But those are the things that we can look forward to from him. Maybe if he gets back on corner duties, when Williams on the pitch, which I know we'll get into. Yeah, Nick, I just you can't say enough positive things about what he did in this match, how that really galvanized the home supporters, and how it really gave us a platform to think that this game was there to be had today.
Real quick, I have to correct us because we're probably a little confused. Mount is actually 20, but he's born in 99 and he wears 19. So that's probably where we're getting confused. But anyways, Nick, go on.
I update my point to say he's only 20. He's only 20.
Right.
He's only 20.
But before we get picked out in the crowd, I thought I'd go ahead and save us.
What were you doing at 20? There, I'll redo that. So I think what, first of all, I think he just has this he's trying to rival N'Golo Kante for the smile of the year at Chelsea. And I think he has this infectious ability to galvanize people, like you said, Brandon. Everybody's behind him. Everybody. Same with Ruben, same with Callum, maybe to a little bit of a lesser extent after the contract stuff. It's like all these guys just have everybody pushing them on. Tammy today, you saw the raucous reception when he came on. They want this to work. We all want this to work. We know that the experiment of using a lot of youth players will have its ups and downs because that's just football. But man, to watch those celebrations and to watch him so passionate, so into it, was just phenomenal to see. It's a little bit of it's a lot of the heart that we've been missing the last couple of years. And you saw it a little bit last year when Ruben was finally kind of coming back and scoring goals. But man, he started the season relatively well, and I'm proud of him. I really am.
So Lampard had some quotes on Mason after the match. He says his performance, particularly in those opening patches where he is so good off the ball, he works hard and closes people down, which helps him get his goal. He's also got great quality, and this is a dream for him. He will be disappointed now because I know what he is like, and he will have wanted to win the game. But you should take a lot from that moment, and there will be a lot more moments for him in a Chelsea shirt like that. I think Lampard is gonna I think he's gonna stick his neck out for Mason Mount a lot this season. I know it's only been a few matches, and that he didn't really feature in the Super Cup, but just think how we all voted Barkley preseason MVP, but Mount was right behind him the whole time, and it looks like Mount has gotten the nod over Barkley at least early in this season, and so I think that Mount. This maybe ties back to David Luiz. Lampard is betting on these young horses to come through and to, really make their names and get established as first-team players. And I tell you what, Mason Mount is absolutely rewarding him for that faith. I was talking to someone else earlier. I think it was at, the pub at the Twin Cities Blues, is that, a lot of these young academy players have had even opportunities of 1 or 2 games, but they just really haven't grabbed it and ran with it. Mason is not hesitating at all. I mean, he looks settled. He looks like he belongs there. And you think of his journey, right? He went from the youth team, he went to Vitesse, bossed it there. I mean, he was scoring goals with his right foot, his left foot. I mean, he was just head and shoulders above everyone there. Then he comes back and goes to Derby on loan. Again, minus his injury, looked head and shoulders above everyone there as well. And he's come here and he looks like he's been playing this team for years, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. And then, Dan, I think when you pull in, Callum Hudson-Odoi returning, if he ever signs that 5-year contract that we've been hearing about, if, when Ruben Loftus-Cheek comes back, now you have this really, really young core at Frank's disposal. It could be, because we don't know, such an exciting time, in Chelsea's point in history right now.
I mean, it is an exciting time. You watch the way the crowd responded today. You watched how the supporting group of individuals at Stamford Bridge this weekend really just killed it. They did a phenomenal job, from the "We Back Tammy" to fight out against some of the racism and the racial abuse that he received from idiots on Twitter, to the way that they responded and kind of got behind the players in kind of the tough patches. They're doing exceptional work, and everybody was out for it. So I think it's very hard not to be excited, and even with the results so far being a loss in penalties, and now a draw.
Yeah, I mean, I will say too, like, one of the massive storylines of this game are that was that Frank was coming back home, right? So the We Are the Shed people did a great banner, and then there was another, kind of welcome home Frank thing. The crowd is into it. These guys have some leash. I think it's when you're playing youth players, when you're playing guys even like Zouma, who are coming back and don't have the same cohesiveness with this team, it is going to take a while, and there has to be patience. It's not going to be an unlimited amount of patience. I think there were some moans and groans at the pub today. There were some moans and groans at the bridge when we kind of lost our way a little bit. But they are young, and Mason right now is great. He's going to make mistakes. Tammy's going to make mistakes. Ruben, Callum, all these guys will make mistakes. It's in the hopes that they can take this experience in this particular weird season that we're about to have with the transfer ban, and apply that forward to future seasons so that we're better off. And I think we all kind of have to keep that perspective.
Right. The attacking style in which Lampard's team came out of the gates with was amazing. It was absolutely brilliant. Oh yeah, it was great. I think a part of that, which we can touch on, Dan, is the Christian Pulisic piece. We're super biased. We're not going to hide it. It's going to be ever present in our content this season. But look, Christian Pulisic made his Premier League debut at Stamford Bridge today, and I think he's already won over most of the fans in terms of giving him a shot to prove himself. I think they've seen enough that they're like, hey, this kid could be great. Being objective, I thought he had an okay day, right? He didn't feel like he really made any mistakes. He just wasn't really able to make a big impact. But, with that being said, he's a big part of this attacking, mobile, like multi-threat offense that Lampard is building. And it's great to see him, get that run out. He's meeting, who did he meet earlier today? Like whatever NBA player was,
Josh Hart.
side.
Yeah, Josh Hart.
There you go, right? And who was mistaken for Ruben, which is kind of funny, outside the bridge. But look, Pulisic wasn't amazing today, but I don't think he hurt us, which I think, to be fair, is a good day out at this level.
Well, no, I think you want a little more. I don't know if I would say that's... there was an opportunity to win this game very early on, and with a little bit more clinical nature in terms of our finishing, with a little bit more forward runs with some of our passes, better interchange play. Christian will be his hardest critic, and he will work to improve. It's the way that he has spoken about it. It's the way his father has spoken about him as a player. It's what we've seen from him as a U.S. soccer player as we watch for the men's team. But yeah, I don't think he'll be happy with the fact that he wasn't able to assist or contribute a goal in this match. And there should have been an opportunity to do so. What's really weird, Nick, is now we're so used to this very asymmetrical attacking thrust forward previously, because everything worked through the left on Hazard's side, and basically we did nothing on the right. The right was basically all defensive work, and occasionally Willian and Azpilicueta would get something going. But for the most part of the time, we would just go directly to Hazard. And I think we're having to unlearn some of the fact that you don't just need to go down the left all the time, because now you have Pedro or Willian and Pulisic kind of on the wings right now, and you don't have to go down just one side. It can be a little bit different than the way it has been previously.
Yeah, we're not, the team is not playing through one side. There's attacks kind of coming from every which way, which is kind of what we thought would happen when Hazard left, right? I mean, when your kind of sole focus point, and if you're in opposition defense, goes away, it can be a huge relief that you don't have to play against Eden Hazard anymore. But on the flip side, I think it becomes a little bit more unpredictable as to where the interchange is going to come from. You've seen in both games that they've played together now that Pedro and Pulisic will switch sides occasionally, kind of similar to the Mazakar days of old, where we'd have a lot of switching of Eden Hazard and Juan Mata and Oscar and all that kind of stuff. So, I think, to get back to Pulisic, he played okay. I think most people understand that he is legitimately one of the fastest players in the Premier League. He's absolutely ridiculous when it comes to speed. But the final third quality wasn't quite there. I will give him a lot of credit for tracking back, a lot. I mean, the 4-2-3-1, if that's what it is, depends on wingers willing to track back and help win the ball upfield so that we keep the spacing between our midfield and defense, to be a more acceptable level. But yeah, I think overall it just wasn't the star of the show. I think Mason really kind of took that on today, and our hope is for him that he's not putting so much pressure on himself, Brandon, that he's not able to kind of see the forest of the trees.
Yep, I think. Yeah, no, I think it'll be fine. I mean, he's so level-headed, and he's got good people around him. He seems to, be a safe bet, as far as like potential clubs to look at, and I think he'll definitely find it. It's early days. I'm not writing anyone off, and I'll back that up later in the podcast when we talk about the not so great parts of this. But again, I mean, he had a positive performance today, and we'll kind of obviously keep a very close eye on him. But we're going to take a real quick break. We appreciate this sponsor for supporting the podcast financially. And when we get back, again, we'll be talking about why Chelsea faltered today. We provide some thoughts, maybe a surprise appearance from Nami Footy. Not sure if you've heard his name mentioned on this podcast before. And then maybe some thoughts of, hey, what is working under Frank's reign? So a lot of positives to still come on this. So we'll be right back after this quick message. All right, so continuing on, right? Chelsea faltered today. We were up 1-0. We gave up a goal. I don't care what anyone says. We lost 2 points. That's just the way the match went.
That's math,
so we've got
Brandon.
What?
That's what they call math.
Maths in the UK, actually.
Ever heard of it?
So here are some ideas that we have, Dan. Feel free to grab one of these and run with it. So basically the same starting 11 from the Super Cup match, aka fatigue. That match lasted 120 minutes, aka fatigue. Not everyone is N'Golo Kante fatigue. Oh, but we do have some other reasons. But let's go ahead and settle on fatigue first. I heard some terrible takes. One was a front-facing video about how just everything was botched because if the players are fatigued this early in the season, we're screwed. This is essentially extended preseason. I don't think really anyone is at full fitness. And outside of Liverpool, who's had 2 patty cake games, like Chelsea have had the hardest run in Europe so far in the first 3 matches. And there is understandably a toll. And by the way, I'm still super upset that Super Cup even went to extra time. That's bullshit. It's a glorified friendly.
Super Cup should go to penalties after 90 minutes.
After 45 and a half.
After 45 and a half.
We're not going to relitigate that. That would just be as pointless about talking about VAR and handballs, so we will just move in a different direction. But I do think the context is important because if you don't remember that there was a Super Cup midweek, that the starting 11 outside of Tammy Abraham and for Giroud is essentially the exact same as it was on Wednesday with travel. Like, these players have basically been going, and this Monday, I'm hoping everybody has gotten a day off to rest and recover appropriately because it is going to be a long season. And, the fact that for that first 15, 20 minutes, they were pressing hard, what's starting to happen is that there's just not enough gas in that tank to go as long and as hard as they're trying to at the moment. We saw that with Pochettino 2 or 3 years ago, he would try that really, really aggressive press for 15, 20 minutes, just absolutely hounding an opposition team's players. And what would happen? They would get gassed. They weren't up to go that much. And I think what we maybe didn't do appropriately in this match, Nick, is say, hey, you know what? The players are really, really tired, and we need to get way more compact with these lines because we're leaving all that space in the midfield again in front of our back four, and they're going to exploit it. And what did Leicester do in the second half, Nick? They exploited it heavily.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when we look at that first 20, 25 minutes, that was a gamble by Frank to say, my home return, Pulisic's debut, Mason Mount, all this positive vibes from the Super Cup on Wednesday. We're gonna go out and try and knock him out in the first round, right? Like that, it's one of those types of deals, and it failed. That tactic failed, because the result is a 1-1 draw, and honestly, it could have been a hell of a lot worse in the second half. So, I think it was emotional drainage as well as physical drainage that kind of contributed to the performance. And I cannot say enough about N'Golo Kante every fucking week, but we're going to do it again because he played 120 minutes on Wednesday and then went out and was asked to play another 94 minutes. I mean, and he's not even fully fit. Like, I don't know what else to say about this guy other than, Frank has looked at him and said, you're going to be a workhorse for me again, and you're going to be the guy. I mean, he is our best player as it stands. So I think it was a little bit naive from a tactical standpoint to set the team up the same way. I can understand, Brandon, why Frank did it, because, you want to take the connection and the team spirit from Wednesday and apply it forward in the first home match of the season and put on a show. But, you started to look at, like, Pulisic looked gassed early. I looked at, like, Zouma+Christensen, who played relatively well, but I think we're also, like, mentally fatigued because Liverpool and Leicester are way different styles for, defensive pairing. There's just a lot that goes into that, and not all of it's just minutes played.
Well, exactly. We'll probably get in a little bit of formation gate, down the line, because it seems like Lampard likes to switch it up a little bit. Now, before we had Sarri in, Sarri out. Now we're going to have 4-3-3 versus the 4-2-3-1s. I see it happening. But, I think, Frank wants this to be a very tactically flexible team. I think he's looking for the team to be able to kind of shift and adapt to different situations. And so, maybe the 4-3-3 was the right call for Liverpool, and it just lined up perfectly. Maybe he thought the 4-2-3 would be a little bit more defensively. Turns out late in the match that wasn't really it. But it could go back to fatigue. Like, it doesn't really matter what formation you're in. If you don't have the legs to get back, transitioning from offense to defense, you're in trouble. And it's actually one of the most difficult things to do in the game. So as I'm reading up on tactics and this stuff actually for my day job, the game is broken down into, attack with, possession and attack, possession defense, and then it's all about transition from defense to attack and attack to defense. And when you have the ball, Chelsea were very sloppy in that transition when they had the ball, and then getting back on defense, we were in bad situations. And not saying this is an exact replica, but early on in Maurizio Sarri's career, we would commit way too many people forward, and then there'd be like Jorginho on 4 going the other way. There's light signs of that, but I think that's also part of the mentality that Frank wants to play with, his numbers forward, be on the front foot and be aggressive. So they'll figure that out and figure out what the shape is. But yeah, fatigue was a huge part of it. Some other ideas from Nami Footy who tweeted out.
Before we get to that, can we also maybe I think there is some respect to be given to Leicester, particularly for Maddison, who I think had a really, really strong game and was given us a bit of a challenge. Oh, yeah. The second half, when he grew into it, when he was finding a little bit of his feet there, he definitely, and really the Leicester attacking kind of individuals. Vardy was, definitely was quiet, right? But he does like to score against the teams and what we call the big six. But he was kept pretty quiet, but he was not making it easy either. So I mean, there's a really strong attacking set of players in this Leicester team, and I think they made life difficult for us too. They're not a pushover team anymore by any means.
Okay, but some other ideas that we have out there are from Newman. So one tweet he said is, one thing that I've noticed in these two Premier League games is that Chelsea go all crazy in the first 15 minutes, and by crazy I mean aggressive press, closing down with speed and aggression, and then their fuel level drops as the game progresses, which, by the way, is so normal. Like, that happens. Frank even mentioned this, Nick. He said, when we are in active rest mode, he goes, we just need to be better with the ball. Again, Chelsea got caught in possession way too many times in the second half. I think that's a lot of what has to do with it.
Yeah, and one of those was N'Golo Kante giving the ball up on the halfway line, which you almost never see, right? It's that kind of stuff. Pulisic got pickpocketed a couple of times. It's just they were careless with the ball, and especially in the second half, it was just, it's just not the mentally sharp performance that you need, even if you're physically tired. So that makes a huge difference. And of course, you're right. Like, you're not going to be able to just press like that for 90 minutes. It's impossible. And most of these guys are running a 10K every match regardless. And then to add, sprinting a full 10K with cutting and movement into that, it's just impossible to do that. So naturally you would fade, but mentally you got to stay sharp.
All right. Well, the other idea Newman had was in the game against Liverpool, Chelsea did not press this way, and that's why they stayed in the game until the last minute, as they had the energy to play. But when Chelsea pressed crazily, they look lethargic in the later stage. Again, this just all makes sense, Dan. If I don't know if it's Frank or maybe the players, but there's the learning curve of game management for this group, and they're going to have to figure out how do maybe they don't play as great as they did in the first 25 minutes, but they're able to do that to 80% and then, maximize it much, much longer along the lines.
Yeah, I think that's accurate and one of maybe the most correct things you've ever said on this podcast. So, bravo.
Make it sound like a rarity.
Oh, I mean, they're not that frequent. But, I think we just have to get to a place of understanding of how we press, how often we press. We're pressing players. We're not pressing passing lanes, which is a little bit different from what we saw from Sarri last year. The players would really try to kind of form around the triangle, that was kind of being formed with the lanes that you want to have, right? You want to be able to give yourself three places to kind of pass at any given time. And when we were under Mauricio Sarri, we were trying to kind of just block the lane. We are going after the individual players right now, which is going to require a little bit more motoring. I mean, even Schmeichel was being closed down at times, and in this match, Giroud was doing it too. I know that we saw that, Nick. We were like, what the hell is Ollie doing, trying to get in the action as well? It's like the whole team was there and doing it, and I think part of it was the excitement that was in the crowd. Part of it was the home opener. I think part of it was maybe a little unfortunate level of game management, because we had taken just, again, 20% extra and spread that across into the 45, 46 through 60th minute. We'd probably be in better shape.
Yeah. I mean, look, Giroud I thought was all over the place, and I was impressed by him. I mean, he should have had an assist in this game too. I mean, that was the Kante shot that was blocked late. But I mean, again, between the pressing, between him, I think getting the ball and passing, he was really solid. I think he just ran out of gas too. I mean, it was just overall that was a theme of our podcast, Brandon. They just ran out of gas, and it's understandable playing 3 hard matches in a week.
Yeah. Again, no one else has had to do this outside Liverpool, and I think it's safe to say that Liverpool have had nowhere near the challenge that Chelsea have. It's just objective, honestly, at this point. So overall, it could be much worse. I mean, we're out of the relegation zone. What else are we looking for after the second week? I mean, come on.
We did it.
Hey, look, we are closer to City than we have been since the end of last season in terms of points on the table. So things we just got to keep in perspective.
Absolutely. You just got to hold on for dear life the rest of the season in Tail City. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap with some positive things we can talk about. So I think, Dan, you were pretty excited about Emerson's performance today.
Hell yeah.
Maybe this will even slow your roll on moving Aspie to left back.
Sometimes you say things and, you hope that they're not recorded and able to be played back for you into your ear holes. And that is the magic of doing a podcast and having someone vindictive enough to clip it probably and place it in here. He's looked really sharp. I would say my only concern with him has been that sometimes he's gone so far forward that he does not always get back as quickly, and that does leave our center backs just a touch exposed. But in general, I think he's shown some real character, some real fight, some really good tactical acumen, and when to try to move forward, when to play himself into the attack. I like to see him continue to improve how he's engaging with Pulisic and whomever he's working with in the midfield, because these fullbacks have to get forward if Frank is going to really institute what he wants to do, Nick. But in general, I'm more positive on Emerson than I was in the start of the season. And he's definitely looking like that player that Juventus wanted to buy to replace Alexandro.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked great. I'm impressed with the amount of minutes that he's played too. I mean, there was one point in the match where you and I were looking at each other, and because the way the ball was moving across the pitch, he actually went over to the right side and was playing further up the pitch than Aspie to help kind of create something on offense, because we were kind of down in the dumps a little bit. He was everywhere today. You just kind of hope that with his injury history that he's able to stay healthy, and that's kind of my only concern with him. Otherwise, I've been very impressed.
I think he's a fantastic one-on-one defender. If an attacker has the ball and they're both flat-footed and someone's got to make a move, like, he's a corner. Like, he will just shut down, moves with you, is amazing in his athletic ability. But the other one we wanted to talk about, how quickly these two players have gone from liability to reliable, and that is Christensen and Zouma. I think they have... I'll just speak for myself rather than maybe some other people. But, Nick, how quickly they've formed a bond, how quickly, they've kind of figured each other out. And even, Zuma's confidence in playing the ball across the field today. He even at one point had a short driven ball with his left foot, and he put it right on a dime. And these guys have no reason to have any confidence. They did well against Liverpool. One coming out earlier than the other, but it's just like they got absolutely torched against United, and they come out and look solid against Leicester 7 days later. I think that shows a lot to their character.
Yeah, look, they weren't perfect today by any means. I think what you like about their performances in 1 week, is they go from absolute zeros against United to heroes against Liverpool, and then somewhere in between against Leicester. I will agree that Zuma's passing, the short passing, has still a lot to be desired, but he was pinging some Rudiger-esque crossfield balls today that were really impressive. And then I think conversely, I have been very impressed, Dan, with how quickly Christensen has regained his ability to read the game and sprint with Jamie Vardy. He was there, 2 or 3 times where it was just kind of one-on-one, and he had to make a play, and he did. It's good to see growth week over week.
Yeah, he looks like he finally downloaded the firmware update, and he's now back to operating with all of the processing power behind it. Yeah, he had some really good slide tackles. Yep, absolutely. But yeah, he really is offering, I think, the things that we were excited about when he was helping to unseat very senior players in our back line. I think the one thing we want to see from both of them is, as we continue to attempt this idea of zonal marking on corners, is more command in the box and an ability to really be assertive in the way that, two tall individuals should be able to do so. I mean, you want your center backs to be rocks back there. And I think that's one area of their combined game that I'd like to see improve. But we put Leicester into the situations where they were getting offsides, which is because and is a credit to the fact that the line was actually holding appropriately and not falling off, which was something that we saw versus United and was extremely concerning. And so if we can have that stability, Brandon, where we're not allowing someone to be played on side because we failed, then we're getting where we need to be with the defense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think when we did the who should it be, Rudiger and who, because we just assumed he'd come right back into it, I said it was going to take time. And it's kind of interesting to see that Rudiger wasn't in the lineup today, even though he was Wednesday. So I wonder how much time it's going to take for him to come back. But it might not be just insert right away for Rudiger. It depends on how this partnership goes. But again, that's just a really good thing.
Well, and with the Super Cup lineup, you could have more players on the bench too, which is probably a part of it.
Right. They had 12 on the bench, which is pretty crazy. So friend of the pod, @SebC_, had some more tweets. Also talked about Maurizio Sarri, but he's staying consistent, he's staying on brand. So here's a couple. So he says, first one up, we're lacking ruthlessness because of the attackers are young. Mount, Abraham, Pulisic are making sure to get shots away, and that's already very good to do at 20 and 21 years old. But scoring needs to be more ruthless than that, to smash it in the corners of the goal. But then he puts in all caps, give them time. He continues and talks about, in open play, we're showing more urgency to move the ball around than at any point under Maurizio Sarri. And there's 3 different consequences to that. 1, moving away from Conte and Sarri's heavily circuit-based football forces players to think and create structures. It takes time. Number 2, Chelsea have different types of turnovers than last season, where retaining it for the sake of it was defensive possession / running the clock out until Eden Hazard scored. This isn't a piss take. Chelsea's Conte and Sarri had a plus 5% swing of possession share, yet the same underlying numbers. And then wrapping up, he says, Chelsea lose the ball in different but not planned situations with few actual ball winners until the defensive line. Willian is still Chelsea's best attacker in terms of helping to retain it in the opposition's half, was doing the job for Mourinho and Sarri. Now, we can push on Willian a little bit, Dan. But it just comes back to ball retention. And if your legs are tired, your brain is tired, you don't do what you think, and it falls apart a little bit, it's good to hear that Seb sees some really strong positives from this team under Lampard versus the Antonio Conte and the Maurizio Sarri days of Chelsea.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And what I would say is I think Willian got a lot of hate in dark corners of your favorite social media platforms for his first minutes under Frank Lampard at Chelsea. Just think about that.
His first touch was with his shoulder. Now, that's not his fault because you were trying to clear a corner, but that kind of sums it up for you.
Well, here's the thing, right? He has not had a preseason. He's coming back off an injury, which somehow he should be the freshest legs, but he also has to get back up to game speed. Mm-hmm. I mean, you think about the NFL, it's weeks and months of preparation to get back to play at the speed. And anyone tells you after coming back after an injury, there's a level of time that you need to get back up to what it is to actually play at that level, Nick. And so I think, yes, are we upset that Willian took the corner because it didn't beat the first man? And we saw Mason Mount hit a corner ball that looks much, much nicer than that? Absolutely. But I think Willian got a little over criticism. I think it's easy, you could be critical of the performance and feel like he didn't maybe contribute in the right way, but maybe not overly criticize him for it.
He just doesn't look fit to me at all. And Frank was one of those guys, if you think back to his playing career, there was always the fat Frank, which was a complete trope that didn't exist. But, like Frank had to play himself into shape. So the more minutes he got, the better he was going to be. If he was subbed every other game, he just wasn't as effective. My guess is that Willian's the same type of guy, but from what we saw today, he just didn't look ready to play. He didn't look fit. He didn't look like his attitude was right. It was a poor overall effort. And what we needed at that point in the game, so contextually, was for him to really meaningfully contribute, to take shots on, to help set up players for shots, and you just saw very little of that. And then the added bonus of the corner, I think, just threw everyone into a tizzy. So it was kind of a bummer to see that, but I also understand Seb's point about ball retention in the opposition half. I mean, much like in Hazard, it's not super easy to take the ball off of Willian. You're all as a defender, you're always at risk of him kind of dribbling past you or crossing you up. And so unlike Pulisic, who takes a little bit, in my mind, Brandon, more chances with the ball in hopes of doing something special, Willian's a little bit more reserved, but I think harder to take the ball off of.
Yeah, look, I think Willian didn't cover himself in glory. Danny and I were talking about it at the pub. Our biggest concern, maybe complaint, even borderline, is when he lost the ball, he just stood there. He didn't go try to win it back, and I think that's every fan's biggest frustration with players at times. But again, it's the second match of the season overall. It's his first minutes of the season, so I'm not here to write him off. He's going to have to do it a few more times to really upset me. And look, I could have a lot of egg on my face if he goes on to have a shocking season, since he was my predicted player of the season. Again, something we recorded and put out on the internet for people to remember. So I'm not looking great for my predictions right now when it comes to people. I'm hoping my team predictions are much, much better. But let's go ahead and start to wrap this one up. Dan, let us know who the people voted for the man of the match poll. And by the way, I got to shout it out. When you vote, please, you got to retweet it so we get more votes. We have just under 1,000 right now, and with our sample size, we need more than that to really know what the Chelsea faithful think. So, quick plug. Sorry, Dan, you're up.
I tend to think once you have over 25 responses, there's a high level of statistical relativity to the results, but I understand what you're saying. Anyway, Mason Mount, 53% is our winner, followed by N'Golo Kante at 18%, Christensen at 16%, and Emerson at 13%. I think Zouma was the other one I got a couple tweets or a shout for, but yeah, I mean, when you only score one goal, and that's probably going to be the person who wins it, and I think Mount had a great game, so yes, approved.
All right. Well, Nick, as the table stands, Liverpool are on top, Arsenal in second, and guess what? They play each other this weekend, so that'll be exciting. Man City, Brighton, let's see, Tottenham, then Bournemouth, and Sheffield, and Everton, all on 4 points. And then Man United leads the 3-point gang because they still have to play Monday before recording. And then you have Burnley, Norwich on 3, Leicester City at 2, and then Wolves, Palace, Chelsea, West Ham on 1, and Villa, Newcastle, Southampton, and Watford on nothing. You gotta love hearing on BBC and whatever, all this Sky Sports and all that stuff that already looking at sacking the Watford manager, because why not after 2 matches in the season? Might as well dump the Steve Bruce at Newcastle and whoever's in charge of Southampton these days. I'm not sure.
Hasenhüttl.
There you go. Good for you.
Thanks, man.
But the table is absolutely bonkers. At what week do you feel like is an appropriate time to give the table some stock?
So much like the college football playoff, which does not really become a thing until mid-October, so like 7 or 8 game weeks into the season for college football out of like 12. I think it's probably a similar scenario for the Premier League. You're not going to see a lot of separation until at least the first week of October. And probably even a little bit beyond that. I think most people realize that City and Liverpool are the two, best teams in the league. They're probably going to be the teams that start to run away with this thing. But like, if you really think Chelsea's going to finish 15th, boy, do I have news for you. It's like, we're not going to be there in 3 weeks. So this is all still, like you said, Brandon, kind of everyone's kind of getting ramped up to speed. Everyone's, kind of finding fitness. And, while points certainly matter and it's great to be out of the relegation zone, it absolutely means nothing at this point in the year.
Yep. So Wolves and United on Monday before we recorded. So we'll probably give an update in our second pod of the week. But Dan, I'll go ahead and let you wrap with one final point before we say goodbye.
Yeah, it sucks to have to talk about these type of things, but friends at the Chelsea Pride group mentioned that they saw some homophobic abuse, an idiot with a mouth, and a half behind me. The stewards, though, at Chelsea dealt by moving me quickly away from him and dealing with it. Well done to the stewards for taking homophobia seriously. All forms of discrimination need to be removed from football. So just a good end to the story that Chelsea acted on it so quickly, but just, on the back of the abuse that Tammy Abraham received this past week and then things like this, just, a constant reminder for us to be vigilant, be thoughtful, and help create a more inclusive, world, a more inclusive football, and a more inclusive Chelsea.
All right. Well, listeners, again, a huge thank you to all of you. As always, you're fantastic. We will be back later this week with more episodes. But if you need more content that you might have missed, we have a ton of our summer episodes that you can go back and listen to in case you missed them. We have a lot of videos popping up on YouTube and things like that. So yeah, check it out. And obviously another plug for the Patreon if you're trying to get that sticker. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.